everybody, for joining us again. And I know there's a lot of familiar faces here who have been with us for at least some of the previous tour retrospective programs, and some of you who were with us last night also for the Bar Harbor Whale Watch virtual cruise. That was the USLHS was a partner on that program. So thanks for coming back again. This is our 5th tour retrospective program. It's hard to believe that we've done 4 already, and this is the 5th one. For those who don't know, I'm Jeremy D'Entremont. I'm the historian for the U.S. Lighthouse Society, and I produce and host the Society's podcasts, Lighthearted. And we have Jeff Gales, the executive director of the U.S. Lighthouse Society. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, everybody.
And after the tour presentation, Jeff and I will facilitate the question and answer period. So we ask that you wait until the end, until after Chris does his presentation, to ask questions, and we'll explain how that works when we get to it. In case you're not familiar with it, there's a chat feature in Zoom. So if you look at your Zoom controls and click on chat, you should get a chat box, and you can chat with people during the presentation. You can select everyone, you can chat with everyone, or you can select a specific person to chat with. So feel free to use that during the presentation, but don't try to ask questions to Chris while he's presenting. Again, at the end of the presentation, we'll take some of the questions from the chat and also some of them verbally. So the U.S. Lighthouse Society's tours not only provide a great way to visit lighthouses that are often difficult to reach for the general public, but they also are a great way to experience historical and cultural sites, and that really goes for this one we're going to talk about today. The tours include a lot of other things along with lighthouses, and the tours also support the Society's mission of lighthouse education and preservation. So today's program is a retrospective of the 2017 Baltic Jewels Tour to Latvia, Estonia, Finland, and Russia. I'm not going to say much about the Baltic states because Chris is going to do a lot of that for us, but the Baltic states are steeped in maritime tradition. The Latvian word for lighthouse is baka, B-A-K-A. I'm guessing that it's pronounced baka, giving us the word beacon. And as I said, Chris will tell us more about the region as well as the lighthouses there. And I've seen an advanced run through of this presentation, and visually and everything about this. It's an amazing presentation, so you're in for a treat today. Chris Brookes is originally from England, is a resident of Bainbridge Island near Seattle, Washington, and he has led a number of the U.S. Lighthouse Society's international tours in recent years. And it was a pleasure to interview Chris for the USLHS podcast Lighthearted last year when I was in Washington. So let me go ahead and turn things over to Chris. Take it away, Chris.
Where am I? There? That's got to get my screen up.
Oh yeah, you're gonna share screen.
You're at a Zoom meeting, Chris.
Yeah, but some of us are. I'm still remain technically challenged, I'm afraid. Are you seeing my screen okay, please, Jeff? Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. Well, welcome to another edition of Tour Retrospectives, and today we're going to take you to the Baltic. But so often, when we start talking about small nations like Latvia and Estonia, these are not places that come to mind. So I felt it's very important to start this talk with a little bit of geography and history. This is the northern part of Europe. We see Norway, Sweden, Finland. These countries here, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, and St. Petersburg, are where the tour is heading to. This is a tough part of the world in that these lowland countries for more than 1,000 or 2,000 years have been attacked and challenged and invaded by one nation after the next. But the problem is that this is Norway's 5 million people, Sweden's 10 million. You've got 5 million in Finland. And by the time you get to Latvia, there's only 1.5 million people living in Latvia and just under 2.5 million in Estonia. But over to the side here, we have Russia with 144 million people. So Russia is kind of the big guy in the yard here, and St. Petersburg is Russia's only year-round, almost ice-free port. So to get shipping through from the North Sea up into the Baltic to St. Petersburg has been incredibly important for a long time. So much so that the merchants of the north coast of Estonia and St. Petersburg, more than 500 years ago, petitioned the bishop. The bishop controlled so many decisions at that time, to get a lighthouse established on the corner here, so that when you had the dark and incredibly bad days of winter, shipping knew when they had to make that right-hand turn to get into St. Petersburg. They lost so many ships heading into the Gulf of Riga and trying to get between the islands, and in bad weather, even missing the Gulf of Finland and ending up on the shore of Finland. So in 1499, the merchants of the north coast here petitioned the bishop to get a lighthouse built out on the end here. They were denied. They came back 9 years later, 1499. And in 1500, they were given permission to build a lighthouse. And as you'll see along on our journey, this is one point I really wanted to visit. And Kopu, which is the lighthouse on the corner here, is the third oldest continually operating lighthouse in the world. But this is not the only area of importance. There's a little island off the south coast of Finland, Benska, which has also been a beacon for a long time. And when we get there, we'll be telling you about the history. The Finns are very proud of this corner. The tour itself was Latvia, Estonia, and Finland, and there was a tour extension to St. Petersburg. One of the things that I was pleased about, in that 20 miles to the west of St. Petersburg, the inlet narrows, and about a year before our trip, the Russians opened up that area for visits, and we were allowed. I think we were one of the first tour groups ever to visit there. But so we'll be dealing with the coast of Estonia, Latvia, Estonia, and Finland, and then later on going to St. Petersburg. But first, a little bit of the history, in that this area is called the Baltic, and it's actually the ancient people who lived here were the Balts. But they didn't, from about 900 AD, it's been continually one invasion after the next. Starting in the 10th and 11th centuries, it was the Vikings. The Vikings from this coast and Copenhagen were forever raiding over a period of 2 centuries. But that didn't last too long, because by the, oops, I got somebody outside my room here. By the year, lost my notes. By the 10th and 11th century, the Germans started pushing up into this part of the world, and for 300 years, this area was occupied by Germany. Then came the Poles after the Germans left, and then came the Swedes, and it was just one after the other. And then finally, this area was all annexed by Russia in the middle 1800s, and they didn't leave until the Russian Revolution of 1917, and that's when these 3 countries got their first taste of true independence. But it didn't last. The Russians could see the Second World War coming, and they forced troops into these areas. Before the Second World War in 1939, Estonia was forced to take in Russian brigades. And of course, then the war started. The Germans blitzed all the way up through here, and they had a second whole battalions going up towards Moscow, but they got stopped. The Russian, they marched all the way through Poland and the lowland countries, but the Russians stopped them. And this is really where the tragedy of the time, in that they were stopped at St. Petersburg, and they couldn't get there, so they decided to lay siege to the city. The siege of St. Petersburg lasted almost 900 days. Almost 3 years, totally cut off. They loved the winters, in that the winters, the rivers, the streams, the lakes froze, and they could escape and try and get food. But at the start of the war, there were 2.5 million people living in St. Petersburg. At the end of the war, 1.1 million had died with siege and starvation. 400,000 of those were children. But it was not just St. Petersburg. This whole coastline and this whole coastline absolutely devastated by the war. And 20% of the populations of the coasts of Estonia and Finland also died in that terrible war. So these are tough times, but as you will see as we go along, these are tough people. They get up and get going. And we will be visiting lighthouses that have been built not once, twice, 3, and sometimes 5 times. Terrible wars, but they just pick up and get on and get going. But let's move forward to the tour. The tour, we start in the capital of Latvia, in Riga. This map is, by the way, available on the internet, which Jeremy sent out. So if you wish to download and follow this or print it out later, it is available. We started in Riga. Riga is a beautiful old town that somehow survived. It's a little bit out the way. It isn't kind of up where Helsinki and Tallinn were, but this managed to survive the war. Quite a lot of lovely old buildings survived. But it's also the poorest of these states. But poor has its advantages in that accommodation and food and booze are cheap in Latvia. So Riga has become the bachelor and bachelorette party capital of Europe. So if you're having a bachelor's party prior to your wedding, they fly into Riga in droves, and everywhere you walk around the street, every restaurant is full of one bachelor or bachelorette party after the next. It also survived some of the war quite well in that they had giant barrage balloons, balloons stationed over the city. And the barrage balloons were, when they were taken down, were stored in these giant hangars. And it's the giant hangars that today are the market scene of Riga. Just interesting. And this is Riga. These are the merchant houses which have survived, and just delightful. And with the Russian influence, there are incredible Russian Orthodox churches around. But let's get on with the Lighthouse Tour, which is really what we're all about. The first lighthouse on the coast is I got to get the pronunciation, Saligriva, right. Saligriva is the closest entry to the port of Riga, very important light. But this is, again, one of these towers that has been blown up and demolished 4 or 5 times. The first there are records of fire towers going back to 1536 here, replaced in 1721 by what would have been the oldest lighthouse in Latvia. That got rebuilt in 1863, destroyed in World War I, replaced in 1921, destroyed in 1944. And this current lighthouse was actually built in 1957. The lens from this lighthouse, as with 2 or 3 others we're going to see, is in Orvisi. Despite all the destruction, they somehow managed to keep the lens. One of the things I loved in Latvia is they have all this lovely collection of stamps, lighthouse stamps. So as we went along, I acquired quite a lot of their stamps. The next is Liepāja. Liepāja is in the southwest corner of Latvia, and unfortunately it doesn't look to be in the best of condition. We couldn't get any closer than the outside wall. It's inside a shipyard. This lighthouse was built by the Chance brothers. It was a British-built lighthouse. Their stamp actually shows it to be in a little better condition than it really is. But as you can see from the postage stamp, it's got buildings and light and shipyard right around it. Oops. Finally, we get to Akmenrags, I can get these pronunciations right. This is the first chance we had to climb. Once we're on this tour, we were actually able to climb quite a number of the lighthouses. Originally, there was a wooden lighthouse here built in 1879. That was destroyed, and this lighthouse was built in 1921, and we were able to climb and get up to, modern lighting at the top. The Fresnel, we did see quite a number of Fresnel lenses, but this is one of the more modern ones. From here, we saw that we start to get to the first of the Russian-style lighthouses. This was originally built in 1879, again badly damaged, World War I, rebuilt in the Russian style in 1925, and it actually survived the Second World War. To Holly and Darlene enjoying the climb to the top and wonderful views of the beach. Ovisi. Ovisi is also on that southwestern coast of Latvia, again in the Russian style, and this is the oldest active light in Latvia presently. And together with this light, there is a museum with the lenses from Ovisi here, Sliteri and Saligriva. We managed to get to see them all. Mikkelbaka is the tallest lighthouse in Latvia at 184 feet. It was originally built here in 1885, heavily damaged in World War I. They decided to rebuild it in 32, but in 1944, it was again blown up and demolished. They had a temporary tower here for a long time, and this tower really has been here since 1957. Mikkelbaka, I rather like that stamp. It's a lovely stamp. Sliteri. This was built, established in 49, but this lighthouse was actually not really lit well into the 1900s. This is the first of the style I haven't really seen before. This was prefabricated, and it's made of cast iron and was prefabricated in France. The original structure was here in 1875, and that was demolished, but the prefabricated structure was ordered and built in France, shipped to this site in 1922, and they subsequently have encased it fully in concrete. We saw this style a couple of times. It's an unusual style, which I am not familiar with from previous trips. Mesrags, nice shot of the lights, modern lights at the top. The Estonians and Latvians have this tremendous sense of humor, and I saw this. I happened to be walking near a park one day, and I saw this statue in a park of these folks looking at television. I kind of thought it was really kind of fun. We're now reaching almost the corner of where we go. This is Saligriva. This one had a very short life. It was built in 1933 and then decommissioned in 1984. Saligriva again. Ansi is actually the last lighthouse that we went to in Latvia before moving over to Estonia. This was built in 1920 as a rear range light. The front light, unfortunately, is now gone. This wasn't on my original agenda. We passed this college, which had a lot of naval graduates, and there are tributes to the people lost at sea, and left with this rather interesting Lighthouse Memorial. A surprise to me, I wasn't expecting it, but very nice to visit. As we went through, particularly once we crossed in from southern Latvia into Estonia, some interesting old houses, which I thought was fun. And then as we walked, I noticed these people were drying their fish. Dried cod and dried fish were kept a way of keeping food for the winter months. I can't say I've ever enjoyed them, but it's an interesting way of surviving. And lovely old houses, unfortunately showing their sign of wear. we reached Virtsu, which is the first lighthouse we came to in Estonia, but unfortunately, the original 1866 lighthouse was destroyed in World War I. It got destroyed again in World War II, and they never replaced the lamp. So there's an interesting lighthouse tower, but no lamp. This is the hike to Kipsari, which probably nearly killed us. It's probably more than we should perhaps have attempted. It was a round trip. It's a 6-mile hike to get to the leaning lighthouse of Kipsari. Abandoned, where was it? Built in 1933, but it's really been inactive since 1992. It was tilting at about a 15-degree angle when we were there, and I expected to see it had collapsed by now, but I've actually read that it's now moved back more vertical, the tides and the shifting sands. But this was a long hike, and probably a hike too far, but it's a great lighthouse, great spot to see. From there, we started to go out to the islands off the northwestern coast of Estonia. This was our only mode of transport out to the islands. Several people managed to get inside, but the few folks who were stuck on the outside there did get a pretty good soaking, including poor Janet. I think fortunately they got wet on the return trip, and the hotel wasn't too far away. But an interesting mode to get out to the islands. This is Vilsandi. Let me just get to Vilsandi. This was there were originally 2 towers built here in 1809. Then one was demolished in 1840. They rebuilt it in stages. It's had various additions added to it over the years. And it had a first order Fresnel lens. But really the sad story here is for 30-odd years, the lighthouse keeper, Arthur Toombs, started working here in 1906, and he looked lovingly after this lighthouse all through 1941, when the Soviets arrived and they shipped him off to Siberia because he knew too much about the coast and the lighthouses. Sorve. This is the 3rd structure here. Originally 1863, destroyed in World War I. And then this was the site, this particular this beach was the site of landings in World War II, and it was totally destroyed. They put a temporary wooden structure up, and then when the Russians arrived, they viewed this corner as a highly restricted zone. Nobody could go in. And it really, it's only after the Russians have left and Estonia became independent, they actually rebuilt this lighthouse in 2017, 2018. And it's really become quite well known as a place to go at weekends. But it's not all lighthouses. As we came up to up along the coast and out to the islands of Estonia, one of the islands has this beautiful castle, Kipsari, and it's probably best shown from a drone shot, where it's just an exquisite castle, and we were able to spend a whole day in and around that area, and I really enjoyed it. But they must have had giants here years ago, and that in the castle grounds were these interesting seats, and that's Janet just enjoying herself on the seats around the castle. Outside, as we moved north, we were heading from one island to the next, and there was a collection of old windmills. I doubt that they were all ever located this close together, but it forms a very interesting museum as we moved from one island to the next. Kopu. This is really one of the treasures that I really wanted to see. This is the 3rd continually operating lighthouse in the world. After the oldest is the Tower of Hercules in Spain, and the second oldest is Hook Head in Ireland, and this is the 3rd oldest. And I said before, they finally got permission to build this in 1500. it's all rock. And it took them 30 years to collect and build to this level, to that first level. But it's solid, it was solid rock. There were no internal stairs at that time. So you had rungs, and the people who came to light the fires for the light had to always climb rungs, and later on they did actually put a stairway on the outside, but initially it was all rungs. And I can remember when I lived on the East Coast, I used to split 1 or 2 cord of wood for a winter, and I thought that was a lot of hard work. But for this lighthouse, they burnt 1,000 cord of wood a year. And it took 7 lighthouse keepers to continually look after it day and night. They burned fires 10 months of the year. June and July, when you had the midnight sun, they didn't feel the need to. But for every other month, for hundreds of years, they burned fires. Later, they added the next storage, and this, when that was done in the 1859, 1860, but they had enough at that time of trying to haul everything up the wall, up the outside walls, and decided they needed to try and create an internal stairway. And that was done with pickaxes and crowbars, digging a stairway up the inside. They made it. The only problem, every stair is different height. Some are 2 inches apart, some are 12 inches or more. And this is about the only time I've ever seen a lighthouse group nearly defeated. It was just trying to maneuver up all these stairs, each one of a different height, about polishes off, but not quite. Yeah, but it's just, to me, I just love visiting this, and I think, oops, I've jumped one, but I was hoping I had a picture of the top room, but I forgot to install that one. But as you drive nearby, I made reference earlier to the problems of World War II, and they're still finding helmets and other munitions and munition boxes from World War II, and you'll occasionally see them set out almost like a museum on the side of the road. The World War II is not forgotten. Oh, this is an interesting photo of 2 of our group as we went along that day. This is Takuna. Takuna is rather like the earlier one we saw, Ritsna. It was prefabricated in France in 1875. This was a scene of incredibly heavy fighting in World War II, but somehow this lighthouse survived. It's not been rebuilt. It got a bit damaged, but they kept it going and rebuilt it. From there, I took a ferry back from the islands and back onto the mainland. I'll come in a bit tighter there. This is I can't say it, Rikirahu, a small lighthouse viewed from the ferry, built in 1940. This one is more interesting. This is Talimandal. Talimandal, for 100 years, was protected and with a lightship, not a fixed light. From 1858 until 1950, this dangerous shoal was marked by the lightship. In 1950s, they decided that they needed to put a platform there, and it turned out to be incredibly difficult with a series of storms, and it took them 8 or 10 years to get this lighthouse finished. I put this postage stamp here of Kerry, which was our next stop, because I wanted to point out, when you see Kerry, it looks like this today. But when it was first constructed, this whole upper area was a room covered with wood. The wood hasn't existed for a long time today, but I thought it interesting just to show you the difference. Today, it's a little sad. And unfortunately, I think it's starting to fail. Let me just get to the point of my notes. We're 20. Kerry. It was really the tower. This tower was established in 1858. I can't find the details of the lower top, but I think this base is from a much earlier lighthouse, and they tried to renovate it in 59, but the 1959, but they've since had more trouble, and you can see around this base they've put giant steel bands to try and hold it together. This photo doesn't show it, but the sea is encroaching on this side, and it's all starting to erode. So I don't know that Kerry will last that long. The rising sea levels and erosion and winds are definitely taking their toll here. Finally, we reach Tallinn. Tallinn is this beautiful magic city, which is the capital of Estonia. Unfortunately, it is tourist central in that if you look out, so this is this beautiful old town. If you look offshore here, you've got, or in this picture, three, maybe four cruise ships. Often there are 5 cruise ships a day coming into Tallinn, and that's what, often 2,000 people. So that's 10,000 visitors trying to visit this beautiful little town. The trick is to wait till after about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and they all have to rush back to their cruise ships, and then you can really enjoy Tallinn. But Tallinn is really a treasure. If you ever get chance to go to the Baltic, Tallinn is almost certainly on your agenda because it's so easy, as is St. Petersburg. The cruise ship doesn't have to get you on a bus for miles. They can pull in close and get people into Tallinn. An exquisite little town, but unfortunately, I found it very much touristy. Unlike the southern where we start in Liepāja, which is still quite poor, this area of Estonia, I felt had really, well, quite gentrified and quite wealthy. But we're back on the lighthouse hunt again. This is Pakri. Let me just get to my notes. Sorry? Pakri. No, that's Porcola. Like on, looks like a, no, which, no, this is not, unfortunately, I don't see my notes. I gotta have to skip Pakri because I can't find my notes on Pakri. Why is that? Well, they had originally a lightship offshore, but this was built in 1925 and 1928 and has been inactive since 2015. But they still got the lands. Supi, we're on. I just have to get my slide straight. I'm off track a little bit. Here we go. Surupi, this I love Surupi. This we got access here by courtesy of one gentleman who was on the party, who had attended a military college in the US and had met an Estonian officer who he'd stayed in contact with, and they made our contacts and managed to get us contacts to this wonderful old light. This is a wooden structure that was built in 1859, and not only has it survived 2 world wars, but it survived 160 Baltic winters. Originally, it's a range light. The original light was inside, and now they've moved it outside a bit, but still active and just delightful. And this is the front range. The rear range is the large Russian-style lighthouse. It's a Russian imperial lighthouse style that really, this site dates back to 1760, near the reign of Elizabeth the Great. It was substantially rebuilt in 1812, rebuilt again in 1858, and renovated again in 1951. And it's just a wonderful landmark near Tallinn. One more range light as we left. And finally, this is the rear, this was the front range, and this is the rear range of the Tallinn lights. Built in 1896, it's a 131-foot stone tower. As we came to leave Estonia, they took us to a lovely hotel for lunch and lovely gardens and waterfalls, and it was just a delightful stop before we made the move and got on the boat and went across to Finland. This is coming into Helsinki. This is 56. This is how I got here. This is Hamada. I had trouble with Latvian names. I had even more trouble with Estonian names. And as we move into Finland and finally Russia, my enunciation of some of these names is probably terrible, but they got worse and worse. But this is Hamada, a small light just outside of Helsinki. I'm going to bring this one up a little closer. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Porkkola. For years and years, they had a lightship stationed here. And finally, in 1928, they built this lighthouse. Unfortunately, it has been inactive since 2015. And at this point, we started some of our boating journeys off the south coast of Finland from this lovely village. I should tell a little tale of Antonia here. We had this incredible guide, Antonia, who was probably one of the most organized guides I've had the privilege of working with. And she's always on the bus, phoning ahead, checking restaurants, checking hotels. And she had phoned ahead to this little hotel here, and no, there was no trouble with stairs, and all the cottages where we were staying were on one level. When we got there, she nearly died in that behind this picture, the hill goes up like the side of a house. And it really troubled her that she'd never thought to ask, was there easy access for the buses? But this is just a lovely, lovely spot. But from here, it was a boat journey. This is Carl and Janet and his wife and Claire. And of course, as we're traveling, we have to find lovely food along the way. This was our destination of the day, Benska. Benska is the second most important light guarding the Gulf of Finland. We went to Kopu on the Estonian side. Now we're at Benska on the Finnish side. And this was originally built in 1906. It's a 3.5-story house with light keep and the tower on top at 151 feet. This is the tallest lighthouse in all of the Nordic countries. It was shelled in World War I, but not too much damage. But this is the source of huge Finnish pride in that neither the Germans or the Russians were ever able to capture this light. The rock is about 10-15 miles offshore. In 1941, there were 2 attempted landings by the Germans. Amphibious ships landed Marines on the island. They killed them all, and they never acquired this property. The Germans then attempted to bomb it. They did bomb the corner of this building, and 7 of the lighthouse people and defenders were killed in that air raid. But even today, they will always tell you the stories of the attack on this rock. The other possibility for us, we could actually have stayed here, in that there was enough room, but I looked at I had the thought of doing it, and I thought, well, what if we get stuck with it? You can't land here if the sea is if there's any storm or high water. And I had the thought of possibly having a group stuck here for 3 or 4 days. Wasn't on our agenda, so unfortunately it was a day visit, and we had to leave. But Benska, to me, is probably one of the finest lighthouses on that journey. This is it's a #1 clamshell lens right on the top. You see people up in the gallery there. Spectacular visit. But it's not just the light there. As you go around Benska, you have to be awfully careful. The rock is covered in eider ducks. We all know the word eider down probably, which is the down from the eider duck. It's the softest, fluffiest down feathers you can get. But if you want down feathers, this is the place to go because it was absolutely covered with ducks. On our way back, we would have liked to go and see Rosario. It was on our agenda, but unfortunately the water proved to be just a little too shallow for our boat. But this lighthouse was built in 1863 and it's just known as the Eyes of Haines. The former lightship, Rolandesgrund. This is a good story attached to this lightship. This is tied up on the dockside now in Helsinki. Obviously, there is no remnants of any light, but the best story here happened in 1917. It anchored offshore off a rather nasty sandbar, and in 1917 it was manned by a group of Russian sailors. And they got the news of the revolution in Russia and were thrilled by it, and they all decided to get terribly drunk. Unfortunately for them, it was a bad storm that night, and they never realized the anchor was dragging. Well, the next morning, they woke up with a start to find themselves 50 miles away on the coast of Estonia, and the ship actually ultimately sank. The Finns raised the boat and brought it back, and they tried to repair it. Didn't do very well. And then finally in 1978, this boat was sold for scrap. I can't find the history of how it ever managed to get out of the scrapyard, but here it is all these years later, tied up on the dockside of Helsinki, and now a restaurant. A lightship that's a light of many, many lives. Our last lighthouse in Finland is Sodaskar, and I'm going to pull in a little bit tighter on this one. This was a delightful beacon. This beacon's been on this rock here, like so many others have been here since the 1700s. This was actually built in 1862, but has been active since 1989, and you can go all the way to up to, I did put the picture. You can climb all the way up, and there's a lovely lens, and just a delightful spot for the end of the main tour in Finland. From here, there was an optional tour to St. Petersburg, and I think everybody came with us. I'm not sure that we lost anybody. But when you come into the dock, the waterfront area of St. Petersburg, you find this rostral columns, originally built in 1811, and it had the burner on the top was actually they used to burn whale oil. Later, it's been converted to gas, but it's been here forever. They rarely seem to light it these days, and it was really just an interesting tourist site. There was in the in the main park of the palace a very small Petrovert West Range light, and it is still working. Not a whole lot of information we could find about it, but it was a nice walk and wonderful to find. But going to St. Petersburg, it's not just for the lights, it's for the palaces. And I'll let you. This is the Peterhof, and there are a series of amazing palaces. We spent probably half a day in this palace, and it was really not enough. But it's just one of these exquisite corners of the world that I hope many people will get a chance to visit. As we went through, we kept finding these beautiful Russian churches. Oops, stop Stop. Just stop. Hang on. No. Pause it. It's got to be down. We've got it. We're trying to get something organized here. Just be 2 seconds. This is the Herbitage, also another of the wonderful palaces we visited. And I'm trying to get. This is why I don't mess with. This is once we're from St. Petersburg, we got permission to go to Kronstadt. Kronstadt is the former headquarters of the Russian Navy, and until the year before our visit, had been a very secret site. And I'd say even our guide had never had the privilege of getting there. And so we were very much, it was all new to all of us. Kronstadt itself, the town is quite, I'll say, devastated, and formerly there were thousands of naval personnel stationed here, all of whom have now been transferred out. As we came into Kronstadt, we came to the cathedral, the naval cathedral. Outside is a small monument and the eternal flame. But from here, we went into the cathedral, and I'm going to attempt a little trickery here to try and give you a sense of what happened as we went into the cathedral. As we entered the cathedral, we came in this corner were 3 people singing a cappella, which was really quite an amazing sight. The flame is over here, and this is the church. I just loved the a cappella singing in that cathedral. It was probably one of the most moving moments of the entire trip. From there, we went out into Kronstadt itself, the old barracks. This is just the edge of the barracks. This is the Muskoy Canal range light. Boats coming into St. Petersburg must enter now into a very straight canal, and there is a second canal coming the other way. And this was the first of the lights we saw. But then across the way is the one I probably cannot pronounce, Lomonoskovogo. Also, this is a rear range light. Not too many details about these lights, but we weren't sure we were even going to get in, so both myself and our guide hadn't been able to get a whole lot of information. This is the 3-tier fort. In early 1700s, the last foreign occupiers of St. Petersburg were the Swedes. They managed to throw them out in 1703, and in the winter of 1703 and 1704, this whole area froze over, and they brought load after sleds by the hundreds and got loads and loads of stone and created a man-made island and built this 3-decker fort, obviously no longer in use. But I find that there are originally around the Russian coast, there were 5 of these forts, but really quite an amazing property. But if you look over the top, over the side here, there's yet another lighthouse, and of course we have to go and find it. Another impossible name, Kabatsuka Hyena. There were Russian military here with loading a ship, so we didn't feel we could hang around here too much and get too close. But this is a wooden structure obviously very badly damaged and falling apart. And I couldn't even find the date of original construction. It's not active, but clearly was very important to this port at some point. Just offshore is the Tolbukhen. This is a photograph taken from about 4 miles away. This actually, I will give credit to Carl Agri in that I started searching on the internet for images of this light, and Darlene sent me one, and Carl sent me, and then I found this of Carl's on the internet, and I thought it would be very appropriate for today. Back we went towards St. Petersburg, but not into St. Petersburg. Well, we went firstly to the edge. Russians are great ones for statues. This is a statue to the Mongolian hordes that raced all the way across northern Asia 1,000 years ago. One of the tourist sites that I think is almost a must visit is the Church of Spilled Blood. Incredibly ornate and decorated, both on the outside and when you get inside. Every inch of the ceilings and walls was beautifully painted. And from here, we traveled about 30 kilometers out of town to St. Catherine's Palace, another of these wonderful palaces that were built in the 1700s, rather like the Peterhof. Palaces that pretty well bankrupted Russia. The amount of money spent creating these glorious palaces in the 1700s was immense. But going to Catherine's Palace is not complete without going to the Amber Room. The Amber Room was actually taken down and all pieces hidden during the Second World War. The original amber has never been found, and so this is a reconstruction, but just a glorious spot to visit. But from here, unfortunately, some of the ladies of our tour, Darlene, Janet, Claire, and Carolyn, have to wish us bye, as it's From Russia with Love, and unfortunately, the end of our tour. Jeremy, I'm going to pass I'll close out my screen and pass it back to you and answer any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Chris. I think I've unmuted myself. You can hear me, right?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Chris, for another great presentation. Just got a bravo in the chat. People are saying nice job. So great job, and what amazing places. And also I want to give you an A+ for your valiant attempts on the pronunciations. You did a lot better than I could do, I'm sure. So great job on those. So we just got a question in the chat just in the last couple of minutes. Carol, whoops, it's scrolling out of my view here. Carolyn Seifer asks, can you explain what front range and rear range lights are? Do you want to take that, Chris, or shall I?
Well, you can keep going. It's worldwide. It's the same.
Okay. Well, in many countries in the world, including the United States, we have a lot of range lights, and what that, I know a lot of you lighthouse buffs know what they are, but basically you'll have 2 lights marking often the entrance to a harbor or channel. You have a rear light that'll be higher. My arms are going to disappear in this picture, I know, if I raise my arms. But the rear light is higher than the low light. The low light will be in front of the higher light. The rear range light, again, is the higher one. The front range light is lower. And as mariners are coming into the channel or towards the harbor, they line those 2 lights up, the low light in front of the rear light. And if one is above the other, you know you're in the correct channel. And that's basically what range lights are. And by the way, the first pair of range lights in the United States was Plum Island, Massachusetts, Newburyport, Massachusetts, at the northern end of Plum Island, 1788. Jeff, I don't know if does that seem okay? Do you want to add anything to that?
Oh, perfect.
Okay. So I'm looking to see if we have any other questions in the chat right now. Are you seeing any other questions, Jeff? I see a lot of compliments to your presentation, Chris. I don't see any other questions right now. So there's another way we can take questions, and that's through the hand raising feature in Zoom. And I know a lot of you are familiar with that. But for those who aren't, if you click on participants in your controls at the bottom, you should get something appearing on the right that gives you the option of raising your hand.
Okay.
That's digitally raising your hand. And if you do that, if you have a question, you can digitally raise your hand, and virtually raise your hand, and we'll call on you and have you unmute yourself and ask your question of Chris or me or Jeff.
Jeremy, I can see a question from Barbara Paley asking about future tours. Essentially, we've just moved the international, many of the tours a year ahead, in that clearly with COVID-19, groups in close proximity and getting on international flights is not an option. So the tours to Italy and Sicily and Malta that I had scheduled for May of this year are now May of next year. Likewise, Greece, which was going to be September of this year, is now September of next year. And you'll find the tours are listed on the US Lighthouse website. But essentially, we've not canceled anything, we've just postponed things and moved things forward a year. And we have got fingers and toes crossed that by next May, June, we will have a vaccine. And that I can speak for myself only, but I really don't feel safe in taking a group of people on boats in close proximity without the availability of a vaccine. So we're setting dates and publishing tours. They're all up on the site, but it's safety dependent. We're very conscious that this is not, this is a serious a pandemic, and we have to take things carefully.
Absolutely.
I
Jeff,
have a question, Jerry.
Whoop, where's that coming from? Okay, we were trying to use the hand raising feature. Somebody, admin, I'm sorry, I know we communicated via the chat earlier, but remind me what your name is.
Ben Carnavelli.
There you are. Okay, Ben, you can go ahead. Mm-hmm.
As a sailor on Cape Cod, we've come across range markers. This one, as a matter of fact, there's one at the Cape Cod Canal on the west end, approaching, sailing towards the east end of the canal. But did Christopher say that these markers at times are actual lighthouses or just lighted range markers?
The rear, in some cases, actually is a lighthouse, and particularly in so many instances, the front range is now gone. So they're left. What were originally range lights, the rear light is now, the front is gone, and the rear has become a lighthouse.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. I'm not seeing any other questions. Nobody has their hand virtually raised. If you would like to ask a question, this is the time to do it. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Did you want to add anything, Jeff, about plans? Or also, do we have any other events like this planned at this point, Jeff?
There'll be another one.
No, I've done that one.
We're not exactly sure which it's going to be, which tour it'll be, but we're trying to do this every couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully 2 weeks from today, we'll have another one. We'll advertise it a week before.
Sure. So everybody watch for that.
Yeah.
I see a question from Deborah Wilder, and you are unmuted. Deborah, you can go ahead and ask your question.
I was just getting ready to ask about future presentations.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
We We beat you to it.
I can't do
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
it. So there was a question about stamp availability. Unfortunately, I can't really answer that question. I was aware of some of them and managed to acquire a few, but my days of knowing a full availability of stamps are long gone, and you'll have to ask that question on the internet. But I could find them, but I wouldn't know whether you could get the whole set anymore.
Are you talking about the postage stamps?
The postage stamps, yes.
Yeah, those postage stamps are beautiful.
Yeah. As opposed to USLHS passport stamps, which are available for most U.S. lighthouses.
Chris did bring me back a passport, a lighthouse passport from Estonia. They actually have a program there.
Really?
And a lot of the lighthouses have stamps, and sometimes for our tours, for people who collect stamps, we will make specialized, customized tour stamps for the trip. So if you go on a tour, you can collect special stamps. So.
Right.
The Estonian people were terrific with their passport is amazing. You have each page, you have a full 4-color image of the lighthouse together with details of when it was built, what lens, just amazing. And another wonderful fact about Estonia I meant to mention is that they have written into the Estonian constitution that internet access is a right for every person. So if you live up in the cabin up in the mountains, they have to find some way of getting you an internet signal capable of downloading internet. So internet in Estonia, you cannot be without internet. It's now written into their constitution.
Wow. Pretty amazing. I'm not seeing any other questions. So I think unless Chris or Jeff, would you like to add anything else, or should we maybe let people return to their homes at this point?
I'll just say thank you, Chris, for leading a great tour and for making these presentations for us. So we really appreciate it.
Yes.
I really enjoy reliving them in that it's now 3 or 4 years since we did this, and details get forgotten. But I have to get my act cleaned up for a presentation, and I enjoy looking up all the details and some of the dates that particularly where my notes are incomplete. I find them fun.
Yeah. I just want to add one other thing quickly that I meant to mention is that this presentation, like the earlier ones, will be posted online within a few days on the U.S. Lighthouse Society YouTube channel. And soon after that will be on the U.S. Lighthouse Society website, uslhs.org also. And I just posted the map again in case anybody missed it earlier. And people had trouble seeing that. Are you seeing the Baltic map in the chat?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
Okay. You should be able to click on that and bring it up on your computer. It's a PDF. So if anybody wants that and you missed it earlier, you can get it there before we close up shop here. And when you watch the presentation online later, if you want to relive it again, you can have the map printed out. You can follow along as Chris, as you listen to the presentation. So, well, thank you all again for taking part, and we'll see you again, hopefully in a couple of weeks. And take care and keep a good light. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
bye.